Ever since I was a little girl, I was told by everyone that I looked more like my dad than I did my mom, which I never really understood because this is what my dad looks like. And this is what my mom looks like. And if you haven't put two and two together, that's because I am a product of both. I am half Chinese and I'm half American. Now, I do realize that I come across as more white passing than I do Chinese passing, and maybe that's because I have wavy brown hair instead of straight black hair. I straightened it for tonight, don't worry. Or it's maybe because I'm on the taller side instead of the shorter side. So, technically, if you wanted to, you could call me a hard-boiled egg. White on the outside, yellow on the inside. I was born in Shenzhen, China, and after living there for 6 months, my parents and I moved to the US and lived there for a year. Half of the year was spent in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the other half was spent in Atlanta, Georgia. Then my dad got offered an international teaching job in China, so at the age of about 1.5, my parents and I moved to Shanghai, and I lived there for 14 years. So basically, Shanghai was my home for the majority of my life. That was until I moved here to Sioux Falls. And I know some of you are wondering, oh, why would you move to Sioux Falls out of all places? Well, long story short, my family and I were actually stuck here in Sioux Falls for half a year because China was on lockdown due to COVID in 2020. So seeing as there was no possible way for us to fly back, we bought a house here because we thought we were going to have to stay here permanently. Fortunately, we were able to fly back, and I finished my sophomore year of high school there. However, my grandma was diagnosed with cancer, so my parents thought that was the best time to repatriate back to the US to take care of her and allow me to finish my last 2 years of high school. Now, not gonna lie, it took a year of readjustment to finally accept Sioux Falls as my home. And one of the most common questions I got asked when I first started school here in Sioux Falls was, oh my God, what's Shanghai like compared to Sioux Falls? So I figured I'd make a Venn diagram to compare and contrast Sioux Falls to Shanghai just for you guys. And I do want to preface that this Venn diagram that's about to pop up here is a visual representation of what was going on in my head when I first moved here. So it's going to come off as very pretentious and very spoiled and stuck up of me, so just bear with me here. Firstly, it is very common in Shanghai for people to walk and bike to get from point A to point B. Since I was 10 years old, I, along with many other students, walked and biked to school. And what made that super efficient was the very big sidewalks. Now, the sidewalks would be split into 2 lanes. One lane was for the bikers, one lane was for the walkers. So none of us drove because we didn't need to drive. However, in Sioux Falls, my dad had to drop me off and pick me up at school every single day for my junior year. I was a junior in high school, getting picked up and dropped off at school like a kindergartner. So it just felt as though my youthly independence that I had in Shanghai was a little bit lost here in Sioux Falls. Now, secondly, I felt as if my options for outdoor activities became very limited when I moved here to Sioux Falls. Now, one of the most popular tourist destinations in Shanghai is the Bund, and that's in downtown Shanghai, and that's also where the Shanghai skyline is located at. And so when my friends and I would go downtown for let's say a night out, we would eat at a nice restaurant for about 2 to 3 hours. Then we would go to the nearest mall and window shop for about an hour or so. And then after that, we would walk along the Bund until our feet would start to bleed. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Now, in Sioux Falls, I couldn't really go anywhere because I didn't have a car, I didn't know how to drive. But when I did go out, I would usually end up at the Empire Mall. And what I quickly discovered was that I cannot spend at most 3 hours there without getting the overwhelming urge to drive to the nearest Target, spend 15 minutes there, only 15 minutes, and then going home and taking the longest nap of my entire life. You get my drift here. And lastly, Shanghai has Concordia International School, while Sioux Falls has Lincoln High School. This is CISS, the previous school that I attended for 14 years, preschool through 10th grade. It has a student population of about 1,300 kids, preschool through 12th grade. And it's what you call an American International Private School. Now, what exactly is an American International Private School? Well, take your average Midwestern private school, for example, let's say O'Gorman. Both schools are taught in English, both have the same curriculum, the same graduation requirements, the same class selections, except American International Private Schools are usually for rich Asian families that own about 15 different companies, and white kids whose parents work for Disney or Ford or any other car company for that matter. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that I spent half of my life in Shanghai on campus and the other half in my apartment. I mean, after school, I either had rehearsal for a play or a musical, or I had basketball practice, or I had a board meeting for a club that I was in. Even on the weekends, I would go to school, I would go to campus, meet up with friends, study, hang out, and even sometimes have picnics on the soccer field with teachers to just talk. So the familiarity at Concordia, it just made it my second home. Now, Lincoln High School, that is the wrong slide. Whoa, I'm going back. Lincoln High School is entirely different. It's an American public school of 2,000 kids, 9th through 12th grade. So instead of being in a graduating class of 80 people, I was now in a graduating class of 400 people, and I didn't know anybody. There was no familiarity whatsoever, so I just felt like an outsider. So consequently, I developed a very closed mindset, which kind of set me back and didn't allow me to expand my horizons and grow as a person. And there's no doubt that the transition between Shanghai and Sioux Falls was a very much humbling experience. And I honestly wouldn't change it for a thing, but it could have been just a little bit easier if I wasn't so pessimistic. Now, as junior year came to a close, and I had made more friends, more connections, and established roots here in Sioux Falls, it began to feel more like home. So now I'm going to show you a Venn diagram that hopefully appears more optimistic than the last one I showed you. Now, teens in Shanghai could not get jobs. But a job was the first thing I got here when I moved to Sioux Falls. So now I've been working at Starbucks for more than a year now, and I absolutely love it there, if you take away the fact that I have to make frappuccinos every time I work there. Please do not order frappuccinos for the sake of our employees. Next, I could not drive in Shanghai, and I think I've mentioned that at least 3 times now. And that's because the legal driving age in China is 18, whereas in South Dakota, it is 14. Yeah. So I was allowed to get my first car in December of 2022, and even though I'm not particularly good at driving, sorry, Dad, that was just a mere mistake, I love it. I absolutely love it, and I can't live without it because it's given me like a sense of independence that I've never had before. And lastly, not one single school in the entirety of China has football. Football is strictly an American sport, strictly an American staple. And even though I've gone to my fair share of games, and I still don't know the ins and outs of the sport, going to the game and actually cheering and chanting in the student section has got to be one of the best parts, including the occasional throwing of water bottles and us seniors having to tell the freshmen and sophomores to move back. Now, oh yeah, there's football. Now, there isn't a 10-step rule book on how to feel more at home in a foreign place, but there is one set rule that I've created that you must all follow if you are in a similar situation like me. Do not compare. No matter what you do, no matter how overwhelming the urge is to go, oh my God, they don't have a bagel boy, I hate this place, I miss Sioux Falls. Don't. Pull yourself together. Go find a new bagel shop and try all of their different types of bagels until you find your new favorite bagel. Okay? I know it's easier said than done. Trust me, I know. But no one and no place deserves your biased comparisons just because it's different. It deserves your openness and your interest to explore. So don't put yourself in a position where you can't even enjoy the smallest moments without feeling some sort of shame or guilt for being happy in a new place. Because home can be in like 2 or 3 places at once. So, for my graduating seniors that are about to go to a college, whether it be in-state or out of state, for the 9th graders, for the upcoming 9th graders that are transitioning from a middle school to a high school, for families that are moving away from their homes, I assure you that amidst the turbulence of settling in, whether it be in a new house, a new dorm, a new school, home, it's really just in the palm of your hand. And all you have to remember is that home follows wherever you go, and that you're going to be okay. Thank you.